Hey everybody, welcome back to another Whiteboard chat. And today I wanted to talk about digestion a bit more. I wanted to actually go through what the process of digestion looks like. So this is kind of the Cliff Notes version of what that process is going to look like from start to finish. From the time you start chewing that food to the time that you evacuate that waste. Keep in mind, of course, there's going to be a little bit of difference from person to person depending on the composition of the meal, perhaps, how large it is. But what we're going to assume here is the person's eating a meal that contains protein, carbohydrate, and a fat. And this is what that process might look like. So first off, we're starting in the mouth with the salivary glands and chewing. So there's really two things that are going on here. First is the salivary glands are producing saliva, so this kind of lubricates the food. And you're also producing salivary amylase. This is where starch digestion starts to occur. So it starts to occur really early in the process, and you're also kind of pulverizing that food down to small particles, this mush, as you possibly can. So you can swallow it and start the second part of the process, which is going to be in the esophagus. Once it's passed into the esophagus, the muscles are going to start to move in waves. So they're kind of a synchronized wave. So they'll kind of move like this. And then your LES, which is your lower esophageal sphincter, this flap will open. It senses the pressure and then it will come open, and that's where food will pass into the actual stomach, which is the next step in this process. Now, this is where the actual breakdown of food starts to occur. I mean, outside of the salivary amylase, but you secrete HCl, so you have stomach acid and enzymes that start in this process. They're going to kind of start breaking down proteins. They're really going to turn the food into a fine kind of paste, which we call chyme. So the muscles will contract and push this paste down through the stomach, right? So all of these are your autonomic nervous system, right? This process of rest and digest is your parasympathetic nervous system working automatically to utilize these muscles in a wave motion to kind of push everything down, to churn it and push it down. All right, so it's pushing it down towards the small intestine. When the food actually enters the small intestine, it's going to go through another valve called the pylorus valve. Okay, we'll start to release small bits of food at a time. So it's not like the valve opens and everything dumps in. So you have gastric emptying, and gastric emptying is kind of like pacing the amount that's released into there. And that way the digestive system is able to kind of evenly distribute the load that it's handling throughout this process. Once we get into the intestine, or the duodenum, which is the first portion of the intestine, we have a lot of digestive juices starting to come into play here. So the liver's releasing bile, more fat digestion. We have pancreatic enzymes being released. So we have a lot that's going on here that's going to really start to digest food. Enzymes. So proteins are further breaking down. Carbohydrates are broken down, and fat is also starting to be broken down and emulsified in this step of the process, okay? Now, the food will be broken down into close to its final form here throughout the portions of the small intestine, and it's going to move down further and further until we get to the large intestine, and this is where evacuation will happen. So once we get to the very bottom of that small intestine, we've absorbed most of our nutrition at that time. So essentially what remains is like dead cells and plant fibers and things like that are kind of undigestible. So it's waste product and fluid, right? So they basically form together to form a bowel, right? So we're in the large intestine, and this is going to remove the remainder of the water, electrolytes, waste products, etc., for evacuation. It moves through in a solid form, and then the water is absorbed in the colon. So once we get to the lower form, it will basically receive this formed stool, and it will hold it until evacuation from the rectum is ready to go. So the process is paced in a way that's going to allow, like I said, small amounts or proper amounts of food to be released via gastric emptying through this waste process in the bottom. Meanwhile, enzymes, acid, these things are breaking down the foods and absorbing the foods, and eventually water and waste join, and we have stool and evacuation. So hopefully that's a helpful video to some of you out there that maybe aren't totally familiar with what that process even looks like. And I will talk to you guys next time.